Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about debugging in scope. So let's go ahead and get started. For your warm-up today, what I'd like for you to do is type in the code you see here on the screen and run it. Think to yourself, what did the program output and what is this program doing? So go ahead and take a few minutes and do that. Pause the video. When you're finished, unpause it and we'll continue. So what did you learn during that warm-up? Well, let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. All right, so you can see line 1, we created a list. That list has 4 strings in it, and we have a function here that has no output. I have my contract right here saying what's going in and out. Then we print, oh, there's my boy. Bye-bye. So, oh, he's coming back. Oh, my boy. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Carlos, you're in the way. Oh, you can give Daddy hugs? You want to give Daddy hugs? Okay. All right. Bye-bye. Oh, he's going to lay down. All right. Back to what I was saying. As you can see here, we have a list. It has our 4 strings in it. Our contract says that we have a list of strings is going in as the argument or the input, and the output is none. The function here has its name, the argument that's coming in, and this function has one purpose. It is to take whatever list goes into it, find the 0 spot, and change that to a Z. So the first thing that we actually see happen is this print statement. It prints the list. Well, the list is A, B, C, D, and that's what we see right here. Then it calls the function, and it uses my list as the argument. So it runs this function. The list is my list. Spot 0 in my list is A, so we change that to a Z. We printed it again, and now we have Z, B, C, D. So you can see we changed the list. One thing I want to point out is that when you're passing the location of a list, you're not passing the actual value, so lists can be changed. So lists are mutable, which means they can change. Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So if I run this right here, I'm going to type in A equals a list of 1, 2, and 3. They're all integers. Then we're going to create a second variable called B, and we're going to set B to A. Then we're going to append B with a 4. Remember, appending is adding to a list. Then we print this is B with the variable B. Then we're going to print this is letter A and the A variable. So let's run it. And as you can see, both list A and B got append. So that's something you need to make sure you keep an eye on, is just because you saved a list to a different variable, they're mutable, which means if you try to change it here, it's going to change it here. So we can also then print the ID of A and B. ID is basically where it's stored in the computer. If we run this, you'll see that list A and list B actually have the same ID number. So you're actually pointing to the same list with A and B. You're not creating a new list with B. So be careful with that. So scopes and functions. Variable scope is a part of a program where a variable is accessible. A variable which is defined in a function is called a local variable, and a variable which is defined in the main body of a file is called the global variable. So what does that mean? Well, here I have a function and a function's down here. This x up here is outside of the function. It is in the body of the function. I'm sorry, the body of the program. So therefore, this on line 1, x equals 0. Well, x is being set to 0. That's a global variable. This a and this b, these variables are only found inside these functions. So if I try to use this a variable outside of this function, you're going to get an error. Python won't know what it's looking at. So global variables. To modify a global variable defined outside of the function, you must declare the variable with the statement global name of variable. Any variable created inside a function is a local variable. Variables and functions include the function parameter. The variable definition is the function, and the variable declares as global. Local variables of a function can't be accessed from outside of the function it's being called. And explaining global variables are often used for constants. Note we use all caps, the convention for naming global variables. If you're still a little confused, there's this video I posted on my website. Check it out. Global and local variables. That might help you out. So you notice I used the word convention earlier. What does that mean? Well, a convention is programming language frequently has conventions. It helps makes code more readable, but isn't essential for functions or functionality in most cases. So what that means is that we have these basic rule of thumbs that we do to be able to make our code a lot easier for someone else to read. But if you don't follow these rules, your program's still going to work just fine. It's a good idea to keep into these kind of practices because I'm going to grade your stuff, and it's so much easier for me to help you find your mistakes whenever you follow these conventions. For example, function names, we usually use camel case. Second word, capital letter, that's the name of a function. All caps we use for global variables, and we use underscores to separate for variables. Debugging. Use print statements throughout your code can let you know Use print statements throughout your code can let you know where in the program things are not operating as expected. So if you've ever had me help you out, you'll notice that this is something I do a lot. What I'll do is we think we know what's happening, but just to verify that a variable is what we think it is, I have it print the variable before we use the variable. This allows me to see if it's actually containing what we think it does, and a lot of times it doesn't. So you can throw print statements in to make sure your variables are correct. You can also use print statements to see if a function is actually even running. Just a simple put a print statement in there. I'll put a whole bunch of dashes so I get this real long line, and at the end just say this should be the start of the function. Then I run the program and see if that print statement ever shows up. So use print statements to try to find errors in your code. And that brings us to the lab. We're not going to do the workbook part. We're going to start with part 2. You're going to write a program that has a global variable, my num, create 3 functions that update my num. So basically, you're just going to have a function. You're going to give it a number like 5. And the first thing it's going to do with 5 is going to add 2. So you're going to have a function called add2, which takes the input number and adds 2 to that. The second thing it's going to do is it's going to take the number that was inputted and multiply it by 5. And the third thing is you're going to add 2 to the inputted number, then multiply that number by the multiplier. In part 2, you can just pick your own starting number. So if you just want to use 1 just to hard code it, that's fine. Then for part 3, then you're going to change your program up a little bit so that people can actually choose what numbers they input. So you're going to set it to individual. The individual gets to choose the value. It's going to print the number. It's going to call the functions, and it's going to print the final version. So this is kind of what it will look like when they hit run. What is your number? 5. What's your multiplier? 9. Your number plus 2 is 7. Your number multiplied by the multiplier is 45. 5 times 9 is 45. Your number plus 2, 5 plus 2 is 7. Multiplied by multiplier, 7 times 9 is 63. So that's what the finished version is going to look like. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or set up a Zoom meeting with me. Other than that, you guys are free to go get busy. Thanks for watching.